you so much for joining me on another episode where we're spotlighting different entrepreneurs on their business, their journey, their story, and just all the cool lessons they've learned. So I'm super excited to have my guest Alice with us today. Alice, thank you so much for the time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Of course. Well, Alice and I connected not too long ago, but she shared a little bit with me about her story and her journey. And I just felt like it really resonated with a lot of people that I know and a lot of personal journeys. So I was like, I'm so excited to share this and kind of share her insight and her tips on how she navigated this. So, Alice, why don't you kick us off and just tell us a little bit about your journey and kind of what brought you to where you are today?
Yeah, so now I call myself a career clarity coach, but I definitely did not start my career in coaching. So I started my career after undergrad, after Princeton, in finance, working Wall Street. But through that opportunity, I actually got to work internationally. I got to work in Hong Kong and London for a few years before coming back to the States to go to business school, where I went to Wharton. And so even though I have this very high achieving background in terms of Ivy League schools. It took me to these different paths and career, but I looking back, I always and unconsciously in search of purpose and finding fulfillment in the work that I do. So after Google, after business school, I worked at Google, which took me to here, moving out here to California in San Francisco. And I was at Google for about 4 years, and I worked really hard there. I had imposter syndrome, felt like surrounded by all these smart people, and it was challenging. Like I worked as hard as I could. Felt quite burnt out. And I sometimes work nights, sometimes work weekends, checking emails on vacations. So I was working really hard, but no matter how hard I worked, I just could not get promoted. And I felt like I just kept running into ceiling over and over again. And after 4 years of working there, I got laid off and due to an org change. And so I was really upset about this because I had spent so much time working and didn't feel like I was really saw anything coming out of that. And that was when I decided to just take a year off. I did a year long sabbatical to travel and focus on personal passion projects like yoga teacher training. I even started a travel blog, and just really took the time to think about what I wanted next in my career. And so after that sabbatical, I decided to work in a passion industry. I love travel, hence the start of trying to start a travel blog. And I ended up in the hospitality space. Unfortunately, I was only there for about a year because COVID hit and I got laid off. So again, and then I found another role at a retail AI checkout free technology startup. So I was there for almost 4 years. And through all of these changes, I was always, like I said, in search of purpose, in search of fulfillment, and finding something that connected me. And while all of these roles were very interesting and definitely built up my resume, but I just didn't feel as connected to the work. I didn't feel like I was having an impact in the way that I wanted. And last year, I was feeling really stuck because I felt like I had tried everything. I tried big companies, Google, JP Morgan, where I started out in finance, to smaller startups. And I tried different industries, finance, digital advertising, hospitality, retail, tech. So I felt like I was just stuck because I felt like I tried everything. I did everything you were supposed to do. Some would say I'm an expert box checker, where I went to Ivy League schools. I had all these experiences, but something was still missing. And so that's when I decided to work with a coach. And she worked with me to really understand and figure out my purpose and like what I defined as my purpose and where I wanted to have an impact. And the other thing that she really helped me with was living here in San Francisco. There's a lot of startups, a lot of people, a lot of entrepreneurs. And I was always under this impression that you needed to have this really brand new, innovative idea to start a company.
Mm,
And she helped me realize that that's not the case, actually. The best analogy she used was there's a lot of restaurants out there. A restaurant is not a brand new idea, yet people are still opening restaurants. So it's the same with business. Just because coaching doesn't sound like a brand new idea, you can still start a business with it. And that's how I kind of realized that, oh, I could go into coaching, because coaching and mentoring was the one common theme throughout all of my experiences
Mm,
throughout my corporate career that I felt like I got the most out of it. It was the most rewarding aspects of all of my roles, and I really enjoyed it. And
mhm,
so I decided I wanted to pursue coaching for as a as essentially as an I originally as a side hustle. And what's really funny is that once I decided to look into coaching and start a certification program, I actually got laid off again for the third time a couple weeks after I started the program. So I just took it as a sign from the universe to go all in on this journey, and that's where I've been since. So yeah, so that's how essentially I've come to my current business as a
mhm.
career coach. And I am really focused on helping high achieving mid career professionals who feel stuck in their career and want to make a change, but they don't know what that looks like or where to go next. And essentially, it's who I was, at all the different points in my career when I got laid off, or especially like when I was kind of at this crossroads last year.
Yeah, that's so cool. And I really love this story because I know so many people resonate with something like this because I've interviewed just so many business coaches or people in this similar space, and they all went through something similar where they were like, either they were just really good at something and but they just didn't feel it or something to that extent. And I think something that's really unique about you, especially, is that you did so many things. And I think that just brings an extra level of awareness to some of the coaching I'm sure you do, because you have seen a lot. You know what a lot of different spaces, how they operate. So I think you're able to add like extra clarity to your clients because of that, just because of all those very unique and very cool experiences. I mean, I was just recently in London and it's so amazing. I can't imagine like just living there is obviously a completely different experience than being a tourist. So you just have a lot of insight. So that's really awesome to hear. So you shared a little bit about some stuff that you have learned, but what is one of the biggest lessons that you think you've learned that you didn't even expect you were going to learn, but you did?
Yeah. So I think one of the hardest things as an entrepreneur, or even just, through this experience, is um, this idea of overcoming perfectionism.
Mm,
Because at a young age, I have immigrant parents, and I was taught to work hard, be the best, do the best, and that's how you'll find success. And over the years, I've realized that yes, it is important to work hard, but there's a lot more that goes into finding success. And even though based on my resume, I'm quite an overachiever with my background, but I still felt like I wasn't successful because I still felt like something was missing from my career. And so I think it's more than just working hard and more than just being the best or doing the best, because there's so much more outside of that to think about what actually brings you fulfillment and where do you want to feel like you have an impact. So working hard is unfortunately not enough, and that can often lead to burnout, to be the best. That perfectionism doesn't necessarily it isn't always necessarily worth it, and it can actually be an obstacle. And so I feel like that's the most valuable lesson that I've learned over the years, where yes, it is important to work hard, but being the best and is not necessarily always the path that you should take. And
mhm,
so I felt like I see that often with a lot of the also similar high achievers, the clients that I work with, because they're so used to success and being the best, and being that perfectionist. But it actually holds you back, because it prevents you from taking risks, and then you start to build up this fear of failure.
mhm.
And then that fear of failure means that you're not taking risks, and you're not necessarily doing something in your best interest. And I see that often when it comes to careers, because a lot of people end up settling for a job that they don't love, or a career where they're like, well, it's okay, it's not that bad, or they come up with a million reasons why they should stay even though they're not happy, because there's the fear of the failure and the unknown, and not knowing, like, well, it seems risky to do something different, and I'm afraid of starting over and losing all the hard work I've done. So I'm just gonna stay where I am.
Mhm.
And so the most valuable lesson that I've learned from my experience is that no, you should actually take risk. You should not be afraid of failure. That's actually how you learn. And what you don't want to settle, because there may be something that's better out there and
Mhm.
you're missing out on it.
Yeah, I think there's also we get caught up in thinking there could ever be a perfection.
Yes.
It's just not possible in the slightest in any form or fashion, and it's really really hard sometimes to break out of. And I know recently I was just on a podcast being interviewed, and they were like, "What's your biggest advice you give to anyone who wants a podcast?" I'm like, "Just start it." Like
Yeah.
when I first launched 90% of a lot of the things that I did, I was like, it was not perfect, but I had kind of a basic process down. But people didn't really care that, there were like some black bars on the video and it wasn't like beautiful and cute. They loved the interaction they had with me. And that was the highlight of the podcast experience. It wasn't this all other thing. It was really just getting to know me and being able to share their story, and the fact that I was able to give them a space to do that. They were the most appreciative about that. And, it wasn't perfect. I mean, now I have, it looks better and I do a little bit more things for it, but before then, no one cared,
Yeah.
everyone just knew it and they loved it and they loved being a part of it, and that was what was most important to them. So I think that's a great lesson and a great takeaway that everyone, no matter how many times we listen to it, it'll still come up in our lives that we need to remember
Yes.
it. So
Definitely.
hopefully someone can take away some refresh on that, hopefully. But before I wrap it up, I really enjoyed our talk. This has been really great, and you just have an amazing story. So I loved learning it again, but learning it more in depth. So this was really great. So before we go, who is an entrepreneur you would love to have coffee, tea, or whatever beverage of your choice with, and why?
Yeah, this might be a cliche answer, I don't know, but I would love to have coffee with Taylor Swift, and I enjoy. I wouldn't call myself a huge Swiftie fan,
Okay.
but I do like her music. But what I am most impressed about her is her business acumen. Like, she's so
Hmm.
impressive as an entrepreneur,
Yeah.
and how she's built her business and an empire, honestly. And when you think back, or if you know her career, she's actually encountered quite a lot of setbacks, and how at one point in her career she had to overcome all the hate that was aimed at her. And all throughout all of this, she's always come across as quite genuine and humble. And so I would just love to have coffee with her, just to pick her brain and like learn from her,
Hmm.
and just hear from her of her experience, and really get to know her better.
Wow. Yeah, I like 1,000% agree. Like, this is the best answer I've ever gotten. I've gotten some good ones, obviously, of course. All entrepreneurs are great. But I'm like, I'm unfortunately, not unfortunately, very fortunately, like the number one Swiftie in my life. You know what I mean? Like, it's really serious, but it's really true because I don't think a lot of people, because she has so much success, people genuinely don't realize that she has gone through a lot, and she's had a lot of career setbacks that could quite possibly just stump even the greatest of people. Like, for
Hmm.
example, like she had her entire music catalog sold.
Exactly.
Like she didn't own it anymore, which we don't really understand what that means. But if you can think about, generating content or having all of your presence online and out there, and you're usually making money off of it, and then it's just sold to another person, it's a crazy thing to wrap your head around. So there's a lot of cool things to learn from all of her experiences. So that's probably my favorite answer ever, and I'll keep that because I think that's the best. She definitely has a lot of amazing business advice to give. So,
Yeah.
Alice, thank you again for your time. I really appreciate it. This was a really great conversation for me, so I really enjoyed having you on today. So,
Thank
thank
you
you.
so much for having me. I enjoyed being here as well.
Of course, and to everyone watching, I really appreciate you as well, and I'll see you next time.